We'll go live in a second here. Make sure I have my ringer off.
Hey, Kesha.
Uh-huh. Hello, Savannah. Hello, Savannah. It's been a little while since we were last together. Listen, we're going to jump right in and get to our show. We have a little bit to cover and bring you up to speed. I just want to acknowledge that we've had a few personal challenges in that my family has experienced death. We lost my mother-in-law last week, Friday, and funeral services and family time was all of last week. So we missed you, but appreciate having the time to devote to our family. With that said, we extend sincere condolences to all of our family members who could not be with us, and for those who were able to make it, as well as, of course, my husband and his siblings and her dear mother, who just less than 6 weeks ago lost her husband as well. So we continue to live life on purpose, but now we are purposeful in life, in that we now have these ancestors who will keep watch over us. So as we proceed this evening, I have often acknowledged that I am all the one, all the time, to all people. And so tonight I want to dedicate a portion of my show and hope to come back with a broader conversation and more information with regard to the violence and war that has ensued in Israel or against Israel. And I, in support of my neighbors who live in close proximity to me, and my friends who are Jewish, I want you to know that I, with America and with Savannah, stand and denounce violence against humanity and against all people, particularly innocent people. And so tonight I reached out to my friend Yafa, and she uh, asked me to speak with her husband, who is also a friend, but I like their 4 boys. I fell in love with them about 3 years ago, and have since come to love this family. And I reached out and said, can you just share with us information, education, and awareness of what's going on, and to provide information related to the global impact of the crimes and war against Israel and the Jewish communities, as well as our local reaction to what's going on. So, our global impact, our local reaction, and finally, what is it that we can do as neighbors, as co-workers, and as friends? When we hear of injustice anywhere, we recognize that it is essentially uh, an extension of a vulnerability for injustice that can happen everywhere in our lives. And so it behooves us to be concerned about all of our brothers and our sisters. And I'm one of those people who is a huge advocate for galvanizing community around issues, galvanizing community to recognize that when one demographic of our community is hurting, it's incumbent upon us to just extend common basic decency by acknowledging concern. And with that, my friend, Dr. Ito Freeman, who's actually a local podiatrist here in Savannah, the Low Country. He also works in South Carolina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dr. Freeman? And so yes, I just wanted you to just share with us briefly. I know we talked a lot. We almost had our whole show in terms of what your thoughts are related to this random, senseless act of violence that we know for those who are scripturally sound, recognize that there are some prophetic pieces related to what's happening and why we should take a stand in terms of what the Word of God says. And then we want to just acknowledge that this is by far among the worst attacks on Jewish people. Over 1,300 people have been murdered, 300 soldiers. This terror attack by Hamas is essentially, in my estimation, a cowardly and weak act that we stand and denounce. And so, as we have come to know this whole notion of the Operation Swords of Iron, Ito, what can you share to enlighten us more? But also, what is the appeal and the call to action?
So Gaza is about 20 miles by 5-6 miles strip in parallel to the Mediterranean, and it's been always not desirable region that no one wanted to take advantage with, or that they can be charged with. The Egyptians and then Israel conquered it in 1967 and gradually settled it for really beautiful communities in what's called the Gaza Strip. And when Israel signed in the peace agreement with Egypt in 1982, Israel gave up the entire Sinai for I call it cold peace with Egypt, and still stayed in Gaza. And then in 2005, one-sided, the Israeli government decided to leave Gaza and basically made a lot of thousands of Jewish people that live in that area, they moved away. And over the years, there was, call it like a siege from Israel, Iran, Gaza. So basically, they're not able to come towards Israel, but they allow thousands of them to come and work in Israel every day. And even several weeks ago, despite Israeli government and some of the ministers are against some of the leadership, they allow almost 20,000 Palestinian, more than additional 20,000 Palestinian workers come from Gaza to Israel. There's poor economy in Gaza. They've been controlled by Hamas, who basically controlling like a religious authority government, and they have multiple weapon factories and all that stuff, and all hidden in tunnels underground. Over the years, they actually put weapons and missiles near schools and hospitals, and use their own people as shield. On last Saturday, over 2,500 Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists blew up the various fences in Israel, between Gaza to Israel, with explosives in tractors and bulldozers, and they came in with multiple pickup trucks, and also came with motorized gliders and landed all over Israel. There was a big, I was telling to Kesha, there was a big international concert right near Gaza in the Israeli part. There were like thousands of Israelis and foreign musicians, and it was a beautiful area, and they just went in and they started shooting and slaughtering. They went to all the various communities parallel to the border, and they basically killed as much as they could, including kids, families, elderly. I just tell what watching TV and talking to family. They went to areas and they used tires from cars and they burn it and to choke, and so people can die from smoke inhalation. They mutilated people's so that no one can identify them. I just heard today there was senior citizen bus. They basically killed all the seniors in that bus. There was 15 of them. There was a lot of the soldiers there are forward observers, and they're just there to operate cameras or communications. And some of them fought, including females and males. But I serve in that area. There is a non-combative, and I know the area. And although I had the weapon, I was not a fighter. For me, it was self-defense. But basically, it was a very evil. They burn up communities. Basically, they destroyed communities. They burn up cars. They stole everything. And some of the communities there have very successful local businesses, despite rockets and mortars there all the time. So there's at least 250 people that kidnapped by them to the Gaza. Today they just released a video of a female who is a French citizen. There's several. There's at least 20 or 30 American citizens there. I don't know if they are tourists or just double citizenship, but basically there was thousands of advanced rockets or missiles bombarding from the region all the way to my area where I live, and I'm about an hour and a half away from Gaza, almost my mother. So there's a lot of distractions, and the economy is, area there is bad. The good thing is one of the factories, they just restarted it, but they have like 100 people dead in the factory. So they're recruiting people that wants to volunteer. They went into a city police office and they burned it almost on the ground. They killed all the policemen there almost. That's the nearest city. At the same time, Hezbollah from Lebanon, and if you know that Hezbollah in English means the party of God, they're trying to start an issue again. And at the same time, you have also Hamas and all these people in the West Bank. American government, our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was there. Was there, and our Secretary of State, Blinken, was there. And they are big supported. Even a lot of countries are big supporters of Israel. The president authorized President Biden authorized 2 aircraft carriers with 60 ships to, if something happened, they will protect Israel likely. So the Iran or the Hezbollah, we're not going to start shooting. So there is thousands of American soldiers are, if they need them. American government, Kesha Gibson asked me about global American government support Israel by, giving like money for, military support, and America buy equipment from Israel, and the Iron Dome, which is trying to, blow up any rockets that come from Gaza. It's an Iron Dome. It's an Israeli system. All the Iron Dome that owned by the United States in Europe, or lots of them, has been transferred and moved right now by American ships to Israel. They are replenishing the military and all that stuff. But President Biden said he is against Israeli going to Gaza. So that's, I guess, have to be determined between the leadership. But right now, everyone wants to get the Israeli kidnapped people. There's a lot of soldiers, families, kids, Holocaust survivors that live in these communities. They're running out of the medications. There's people with seizures, with diabetes. There are kids that the mother was kidnapped. The kids need, breastfeeding. So they left some of the kids there, and they took the mothers. So globally, is basically it's major. People compare it like 10 times more devastating as far as population death to the September 11. Israel is about 10 million people, and if you think 1,300 dead and soldiers and all that, it's equal to it's almost if you had 40,000+ people were murdered if it was in the United States. Think about 40,000 people. It's the size of, I don't know, Rincon or Pooler. They even send rockets to non-Jewish communities. We have our Bedouins that live in the desert. There's about 10 or 12 Bedouins. It's a villages near the south of the city of Beersheba, which Beersheba is from the Bible. There's 10, 12 of them. I read an article on several Bedouin officers and the trade trackers that they're probably going to win Medal of Bravery, what they did. They already killed a lot of non-Jewish soldiers got killed too. Muslims, some, and other people are dead, so far. As far as local, Savannah, there is a one of the Jewish attorneys, Alan Lowe, is a friend of mine. His wife has big family in Israel. Her, I think, nephew, someone like that, he's in the Special Forces Unit Reserve. He's became very famous actor recently. He's been severely wounded. So, his name is Gelman, last name is Gelman. But apparently we have a lot of special forces soldiers, 10% of it in the units are dead. So this was a cowardly but well-planned, terrorist attack. And Israel was very surprised. I heard that they heard some issues going on, commotion the day before, but they thought there was like nothing. So this is a major error from the Israeli military. Basically, there's communities that are burned. Totally, they burn homes. They burn. They kill cows. There's farming communities. They kill cows. The pets, the dogs have been killed. On this, I've seen pictures of it. People there wanted to live. People are quiet. People, support there, and from my perspective, Israel allow humanitarian relief for Palestinian kids and families to come to Israel because we have the best medicine in the Middle East there, including the granddaughter of one of the leaders of Hamas. She was treated in Israel. But he's there. He was ready to kill. He's now living in a hotel in Qatar. So all these high-end Hamas leaders, they live in 5-star hotels, and they're poor people that are poor and suffering. They don't have economy, and all that stuff. And if it wasn't for Israel having them to come in our factories and all that, they don't have economy there.
Well, we know from your talk tonight, we now know a little about the global impact and the local impact, and that families who are from Savannah or live here in Savannah are in Israel and certainly suffering as a result of these attacks. And our hearts go out to the families. And just from my teachings and sitting under my pastor's tutelage at St. John Baptist Church, Pastor George Lee, we recognize that Jerusalem is a holy pilgrimage for Muslims, Jews, and Christians alike. And so I recently had a neighbor reach out to me and ask what my thoughts or where my stance was. And as an advocate and an activist for all people, and a person who stands up for everybody's rights, especially those who experience unjust acts, of course, my heart is with you at this time. But I wanted you to come on tonight because oftentimes when we are not close to a certain faith or demographic or experience, if you will, we are reluctant to say anything or do anything for the fear that what you say may be inappropriate or wrong. And so I wanted to dedicate this moment to giving you an opportunity to help me bring awareness, for one, of the atrocity. These acts took place or coincided with the death of my mother-in-law and subsequent funeral preparations and family time. And so it was important to me to speak up and speak out and dedicate my show tonight to this, as well as to ask you to bring an offering of information and education. And then as a local government, it will be incumbent upon me, as I do for all challenge communities to ask our local government to have some showing outside of just showing up, but also taking action of sorts so that our community here in Savannah can touch and feel how much we really care. So we recognize that it is no coincidence of these current conflicts that are ensuing, because a lot of this is biblical prophecy, of course, as we continue to recognize Jerusalem as a holy state. And so for those around the world who are connected, we just ask for prayer. There's a scripture reference my pastor gave me, which is Psalm 122:6, which reads, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee." Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that they love thee. And so I want to thank you for your time and sharing. And I'm hoping to have more time to share and extend and bring in more people so that we talk about the struggle of Israel and Palestine and how it coalesces to the basic struggle in the lives of humanity and our daily spiritual, physical, and fleshly connections. And so we know that wherever there is light, there will always be a shadow. But we want to continue to be that beacon of light for all of our community. And so again, I wanted to take this time to extend myself and to make known to my neighbors and my friends. And I want to thank you, Ito, for allowing me to do that. And I hope that you will commit to come back again.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have a good night,
Bye-bye.
sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, Savannah, sorry. That was a little bit heavy. That was a lot heavy. And so we just asked for prayers for peace, prayers for peace, prayers for peace. And so now we're going to switch gears. It's going to be a little bit difficult for me to switch gears here. So I'm happy to be joined.
Well, I ain't got all night. You going to have to switch some gears. Clutch foot, all that. I ain't got all night. I done been dealing with stuff all night.
Thank you for pepping me up. But I want to switch gears a little bit and have some of my heavy hitters come in and talk about all things elections, all things campaign, because I'm out of gas right now. This is some heavy stuff. But we just want to talk about the elections and what you guys are thinking about the pulse of what's going on in Savannah right now. I know, Chuck, you probably are experiencing a lot of what you thought would happen.
You might gotta fly. You might want to mute and come back. I'll mute. Well,
That's that guy doggone Ida Phi Theta. That brown and gold.
y'all, hey, you might want to go out and come back in. That ain't not. See, you messing up. Yeah, Kesha, if I may do a segue to what your last topic.
Maybe I have want to do something, but go ahead.
Jamal, can I tell us Jamal
No,
Touré?
I don't want to go into that anymore.
Okay.
Because it's a very sensitive topic, and I want to make sure I keep
Okay,
that.
I got you.
But
Jamal, I will say this though, Kesha. You think because you wear cute dresses, we got to sit here and wait?
I'm sorry, that was 24 minutes. I didn't realize it was 23 minutes.
I'm just messing with you. We had to lighten
So
up.
for those of you who do not know, we have joining us tonight Dr. Jamal Touré of Day Clean Soul. We have Dr. Robert Bryant, who is a candidate for 5th District Alderman. And we have Mr. Chuck Fagan, who is a local, I would say,
genius
politician, political guru. He is partner with John McMasters of Better Savannah. a platform that shares information and education for our community related to politics. And so, Dr. Teray, you made a post this past week about campaign finance. Well, let me do this. So, Dr. Teray, I want you to talk about the money piece related to the amount of money that's being poured into these campaigns. Dr. Bryant, you've been around a good bit, and so you have had the opportunity to run for public office before, where you ran for utilities commissioner,
Public Service Commission. Daniel Blackman and I. Yeah.
Yes, public service commission. So just the being on the campaign trail during that time, I believe it was 2019.
You're right.
And that's actually when I first met you.
Mm-hmm.
And things are a lot different now than they were in 2019. And I wanted to bring you on to talk about that dynamic. Right. But Chuck, I want you to start off with just acknowledging, why do you think that this is probably the most important election in the history of Savannah?
Right. I'll go back to 2020 when Daniel Blackman and I were running with Senator Warnock and Senator Alsop for the Public Service Commission. We talked a lot about advocacy and who's going to be at that table, expressing the interest of everyday residents. Ever since that time, we talked about Plant Vogtle and how you would see an increase in your Georgia Power Bill. And I don't think a lot of people understood what we were talking about, but you see an increase in your Georgia Power Bill, don't you? Let's now fast forward to now in the city elections. We had this thing called a millage rate. We could have rolled the millage rate back. But instead of doing that, you have people who don't understand that they're everyday working residents like ourselves who are struggling, who have to eat and who have to buy prescription medicines. And in fact, in Tatumville, in the 5th District, I sat inside a woman's living room, elderly woman on a fixed income who was scared that she was going to lose her home because now property taxes have skyrocketed. And so what the problem is, and why this is the most important election, is you have certain incumbents who don't listen, who get angry when you try to bring issues to the table, and who have no regard for the everyday residents in the city. That's disappointing. What makes it even more dangerous is those same people, those same incumbents, are at the mercy of the devil's fruit, which is called money. And when you eat the devil's fruit, you're no longer sober. You can't see or think clearly. And so now you're acting in a way that becomes irrational. We saw it tonight at a forum, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that. But we need people to pay attention.
Let's put a plug in. I want to work you. I wanted to kind of end with that, but I wanted Chuck to start off with, why is this possibly the most important election in the history of Savannah politics? Chuck?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I mean, quite simply, this is the most important election in the history of Savannah because it's the most expensive election in the history of Savannah. I said the other day to John, through your leadership and the combined efforts of others not on council, including the distinguished guests on this panel, we have raised the cost of business as usual to the highest cost in the history of Savannah. Now, I mean, we got some inflation lately. Maybe that's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. The fact of the matter is, in 2015, matter of fact, go back to 2011. You have a three-way race for mayor between Edna Jackson, Regina Thomas, and Jeff Felser, right? None of those candidates raised more than $75,000 the entirety of that campaign. And in 2015, Eddie DeLoach, who is a businessman, who is a small business, medium-sized business owner, right? He raised like $130,000 the first time he ran against Van. And then he raised close to like $290,000, $300,000 in 2019. We've seen now, 30 days out from the election, the incumbent mayor, Van Johnson, has raised nearly $600,000. It's important to note, every member of the council majority, this would be Van, Estella, Linda Walter Bryan, Dietrich Leggett.
You're muted, Chuck.
You're muted, Chuck.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, my mic's going.
You said you cut off on every member of the majority. You're muted again.
Yeah, your mic's cutting up. You keep going and muting. Yeah.
I think this was good.
Somebody be messing with me. I'm telling you. Look, every council incumbent has raised at least $36,000. Dietrich Leggett, who don't even live in the district, raised $70,000 in the last 90 days.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, I want you to start over because what you were saying, this was education. It was intriguing. You said you got cut off the first time on every member of the majority.
Every single member of this council majority at the district level has raised at least $36,000 for re-election. And that's Linda Walter Bryan at the bottom of the list, actually. You know, Curtis Purdy, Nick Palumbo have raised closer to $50,000 for re-election. Dietrich Leggett raised $70,000 in the last 90 days alone. Okay. Estelle.
That's who's getting your mic. That's who's getting that mic. That's who's bothering your mic. I'll take care of it for you, Chuck. You went out. That's who's getting the mic. I found it.
Remind him about where he got left off. But Dr. Teray, we are lost in the money and we're no longer talking about the issues because it is so alarming. It's pretty disturbing. But in the midst of it all, I'm still encouraged because I know that in 2019, Savannah's opponent at that time, who I was running against, raised over $200,000. And I think I barely raised 10. I don't know. I know it was under $13,000 in that race. And I must say, initially it was intimidating. But as I was on the campaign trail, it was encouraging because more citizens were kind of plugged in and engaged enough to where they were not going to be easily bought, if you will, which is why I coined the tagline, "Not for sale." So tell us about this whole notion of being missed in the money, lost in the money, and we're missing the message of the mission and the focus on the issues. What are your thoughts, Dr. Teray?
Well, I'll share this with you. Just like when you discuss about what you did the first time around, so now there's a different element that comes into play that also is influencing people, is that when we talk about dignity and decorum, that is not coming to play with regards to that. So now you got people now throwing money out, and they throw a bunch of money out, and this is a part of their campaign to basically try to minimize everyone who can shake up the foundation of the council. So then that way they don't have the legacy with regards to, say, legacy contractors. That again, they're looking at it that now Republicans don't have to worry about having somebody running the race when they got council members who would do the same bidding, who are not necessarily like most of them, but who would have the same thinking of them based on the fact what they call is the mother's milk of politics, and that's called money. And so right now we're being crushed by that. When I say being crushed by, we're being crushed by people who have gotten money, who now have obligations because they don't have the wherewithal. Now, I'll tell you, there are politicians out there saying, you can give me money, but that will not control my vote. Mm-hmm. And so they give me the money. And so, but instead, we have people who are not strong enough, who are not crushed by that, by the fact that they get support from these developers, from these contractors, they get the money from them, and they now sell the community out. And that's what's going on. And so I'm saying to the people, your audience out there, saying that, listen, they're going to tell you about dignity and decorum, but the dignity and decorum is a smokescreen to help justify them continue to throw money at these people and for these people not to vote for your needs, who will not look out for you. And so that's why it's a smokescreen, because the dignity and decorum that they try to talk about, they don't show it outside of the council chambers, outside the council chambers, on the streets of Savannah, in churches, in synagogues, in masjids and town halls, on the streets, they are quite uncouthful, quite barbaric, quite ignorant, quite mentally ill, that it is a psychosis with regards to them, that you see the behaviors. But now, when you say that they sit up there on council and they're quiet because they have gotten money, and the money then influences how they will not go and vote. Oh, yeah, that's what you all threw out there saying with regards to the campaign. So now you got $500,000 that now for a mayoral campaign. You got $72,000 for aldermanic race. You all should be sitting out there right now saying, why are they trying to spend that much money? There got to be some things coming down the pipeline. There got to be some things in place. And so that's why I'm saying, listen here, that it's not just about the money anymore, but it's about dignity and decorum. And they're going to try to sully the reputation of these candidates who are running for office. They're going to try to sully. When I'm saying sully, some of y'all might not understand. They're going to try to dirty up the reputations of these people, and they're going to use some of that money to dirty up those reputations of all the candidates who are running in the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth district. They're going to do that, and the aldermen at large positions. They're going to do all that they can to try to make these people look evil, look bad, and they're going to try to come at with regards to the mayor. They're going to try to say that they're not stable and that they can't work with anybody. And that's the stuff that I constantly hear right now. And they're using the money with regards to that. And so,
well, that's been a multi-million-dollar machine, led by WTOC, WSAV, Savannah Morning News the last 3.5 years. Dr. Bryant, could you pop in this share screen of mine that I put a request in for? Are you producing this? Is Julius around? If Julius can put this in the show, I think everyone needs to see this. I want to read it.
I got it.
I want to read it, but I want people to see this. Okay. Yes. And I'll zoom in a little bit so that it's a little bit bigger. 2019. This is a quote from your mayor, Van R. Johnson. Quote, "The disturbing numbers clearly tell the story. Our business leaders and special interests have heavily invested in Mayor Deloach. Eventually, those investments have to pay dividends to these investors. My campaign, by contrast, consists largely of donations under $100, many of these donations being less than $50, which represent the benevolence of those who can't write big checks, but who believe that Savannah can be and do better. Fortunately, Savannah is not for sale, and as mayor, I will be unbought and totally dedicated to serving the needs of the entire community." Quote, Van Johnson, WJCL, October 31st, 2019. And here we are 4 years later, and how the tables have turned. I mean, honestly, this was what he said about about Eddie Deloach raising $290,000, and he's at $586,870. His average disclosed campaign donation is $993. The average donation to Van Johnson's campaign is $1,000. And this is from the mayor who said that he was going to give everybody a seat at the table, put a leaf in the table. I just had to share that with you folks here.
And and the other dynamic to that, Chuck, thank you so much. I
got more.
I can always thank you guys for those educational visuals. The other thing to your piece, Chuck, is the fact that a great majority of that money has come from out of Savannah, and people who actually do business with the city of Savannah in real time. We have sitting council members who are actually voting on and approving petitions and items where they are actually receiving money from individuals and voting on in real time, recorded in the broad daylight without any disclosure of such, without any recusals from the vote. And so, Dr. Teray, back to you. You are a historian, and so you can appreciate what I'm about to say, but more than appreciating it, I hope you can kind of shed some light on this. For the first time in the history of Savannah politics, in this mayoral race, there is not a white female or male, white male or a Republican. Did everybody hear me? For the first time in the history of Savannah politics, and every day I walk into, well, not every day, but when I walk into City Hall, particularly when we're going into chambers, you look on the wall and you see a sea of white male mayors, and it drops down to about what, Dr. Teray? Floyd Adams was the
Floyd,
early.
right. Floyd is the first.
And you have Floyd, Otis, Edna.
Mm-hmm.
But all above about 20 or more mayors, all white males. And then there's Susan Weiner, who is a white female. And I want them to get a better picture of that lady. She deserves a little more dignity than that. Not a picture with her mouth open. But how do you explain that? What do you say to that from a historical perspective, but more to what we're seeing play out today? Why is that? Why don't we have a white male challenger, a white female challenger, or a Republican in this mayoral race? Why?
Well, the conversations that have come out from some Caucasians is that the council that we see in place right now is doing their bidding for them. And so that's why you can go out to the Skidwick Republican Club and, and get support from them. And so that's what it is. You're doing the bidding of them. And that's what happens sometimes. See, we get caught in that just because we see a brown face, a black face, a yellow face, a red face, an orange face, a pale face, we think that they're down with us. Just because though we might have the ethnicity, but guess what? We don't have the morality of looking out for the people. And so that becomes missing with regards to that. And that now what happened, your morality has now been bought by funds, bought by egos, bought by, you are able to get the accoutrements of what you think is power, and that, and it goes to your head that you now are different than the rest of them. And that, actually, I'm not even going to express this too. It's also signs of self-hatred. That's why some of y'all heard me talk about this all the time. Titles and position mean nothing, because some of the people with titles and position still hate themselves and hate you.
First of all, servants of some. First of all, servants of some.
So what happens, and that's why I want people to understand, and that's what we get caught up into. We think that they're loyal to us. You're loyal to them, but they're not loyal to you. And so now in Savannah, you don't have to have somebody who is going to be working for the oppressors. Because guess what? I can get two black people, and that again, y'all are the majority in the city. And guess what? Y'all going to support the person who's not engaging in the work for the oppressor. And I'm saying this is absolutely sad. And this is what we have now come to. Yes, they thought it was going to be a change, and they were frightened about the change that possibly was going to occur. But then guess what? They were able to now throw out their accoutrements to these people, and they started running with it. And I guess I might say it might have started actually happening during the campaign trail. Probably started to some of them, maybe not all of them, but to enough of them to now basically try to upset that apple cart. But then they found out, because now actually and I wasn't going to do this because I thought about it, and I was saying, actually, this is not the first time something like that happened. It happened with another mayor, because it was a mayor whose campaign was a grassroots campaign. But the next time when they run for re-election, there are now some money people in there too now. So which I sit there and tell you, I sat there and I look, and I was like, what the hell? Before it was the people, and I was one of the people. But now I saw these other people come out, and some of y'all know some of these people, and they look just like us. So they came out, and I started saying, wait a minute. They weren't around like when we first did this campaign 4 years ago, but they're here now. So, and we began to see that again, certain things happen for some of these folks. And so then they keep this machine in place. And that's what's going on. It is a machine that is in place, and that machine will turn against black people.
Mhm.
The elite machine will turn against the masses of black people if they think it's going to infringe upon them getting some crumbs off the table. The rest of us starve and they get some crumbs and they're happy for them and their children to get the crumbs. And so then that way they can be in the spaces with them. They can drink the wine with them and have the alcohol with them and have the barbecue with them. But then the rest of us are starving. Then they sell us still away. And so at this point right now, in this mayoral campaign, this is historical in the sense of it's historical that this is going to dictate the future of our communities for decades and for generations. Because I'm going to just throw this out there to you, Alderwoman. We lost democracy in 2020. We lost democracy, and the monies that are being thrown out there right now that Chuck them have put out there, that money is being used to make sure that democracy does not return. So everybody checking out the show right now, understand the monies that are being spent that they're throwing out to these candidates is to make sure that we do not have democracy in Savannah for generations. That's going to impact your children and your grandchildren. It is sad and it is frightening because, again, we got people look like us who done bought into the system like that.
And so we find that those individuals who look like us are essentially facilitators, buffers, and carriers.
That's right. That's right.
One of the local historians who have also worked in Hilton Head, Florida, the other areas of the Low Country, you recognize the direction or the trajectory where Savannah is headed because we see how Hilton Head is sanitized. We see how St. Simon's Island is sanitized. We see how Charleston is now.
First place we send the new city manager.
Right, with the architect from SCAD, right? Less than 3 weeks on the job? What was that for? And so you see it, you've witnessed it firsthand. And then when we see the dynamic related to the fact that we lost 10,000 working class and African Americans from the Savannah population during the count. And so greater than all of this is in large part a community as a whole of working class, marginalized, and African American people who are being forced out of Savannah. More and more, we all know people who have been moved out to Pooler, Port Wentworth, Effingham, Guyton, Garden City, Hinesville, as far as Statesboro. And one of the things we've said to our faith community, what this is going to translate for your churches as these people are being pushed out from your pews, how long do you think they're going to be commuting back into Savannah to worship?
Not with these gas prices.
Right. Your church will choke and die and become entertainment centers like we see in some of the other communities. And so, Chuck, I wanted to throw it back to you. And just so you can be prepared, Dr. Bryant, I'm going to have you close us out with you sharing your platform, of course, because you are district alderman. But I also want you to share a little bit about what we both have been experiencing on the campaign trail with regard to the forums. We no longer do debates in Savannah for whatever reason.
Well, so, and that's by design.
Just know that.
Let me.
We got time.
This.
We got time. 68. We got plenty of time.
I'm going to throw that to you, Robert, to end with. But Chuck, I wanted to come back to you. But go ahead and say what you were going to say before you lose your thought.
Yeah, I'm not an esteemed historian like Dr. Torre is, or an educational professional like Dr. Bryan is, but it seems to me that we are witnessing almost a culmination of the long boomerang back to a white Savannah. And what I mean by that is in the 60s, we had, the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Act, the Housing Act, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, all of this progress. And it took about 30 years from the advent of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. It was right at like 32 years before Floyd was elected, right? So it took this whole kind of generation and a half of these leaders to motivate Black voters to vote. And what happened was in the 90s and early 2000s, I would say that the moment Otis had his heart attack is kind of the moment it really crystallized for me. In his second term, Edna took over, then she became the mayor. So, for all intents and purposes, Edna was mayor for like six and a half years, kind of thing. These white special interests realized, oh, well, with the advent of this Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, we can't stop these blacks from voting. They have the majority. So let's just start buying off the ones who rise to the top. And I don't know if you remember, Kesha, a lot of people think we've known each other for like decades. It's hilarious. We met during the 2019 election, like late in the election too. I don't know if you remember one of the first or second or third things I said to you, but I said there's two types of people in politics. There's those looking to inherit the system, and there's those looking to challenge the system. And generally, most people will start in the inherit the system or end up in the inherit the system, right. One or the other, And so, it seems to me we've had, I would say, since at least 2009, 10, 11, around the time Edna took over, we've essentially had, this sellout strategy, maintaining this philosophy. And, to certain people's credit, I would say the cost of selling out is more, not just in terms of campaign dollars, but I mean, we've made some real progress in this term. We have some real progress in this term. It's not enough. It's not what we would like to see. But I think that, it's getting harder and harder. But what do you see in the economy while all this is going on now? Now you see the long boomerang back, where between 1965 and 1995, you have white flight from Savannah. All the white people with money moved. I mean, literally, they built out Skidaway Island between 1965 and 1995, right? So all these well-to-do rich white people left Savannah. But now that we have spent black people's tax dollars on gaudy, over-the-top tourism products, now the valuation of land and homes in Savannah is so high. And now you see this rush back in. Some people refer to it as gentrification. So I just would really be interested in the rest of my panel, especially Dr. Touré being the historian on the panel. I mean, that's just kind of what I see right here, this is like a culmination of the celebration of the long boomerang back of regentrifying this city. And it's been a 50, 60-year project since before the days of Rousakis. And I, for one, I'm just not interested in being a part of it. I'm not going to support anybody who governs like this council has. I won't support candidates for the commission who feel this is a good council majority. I'm just not moving forward with it. So I'm gonna hop off and listen because I got to run. But obviously, early voting starts today. Right? You can go to the Civic Center, Eisenhower. We really want to see strong early voting numbers, get a feel for where this election's going. But I really appreciate your strong leadership this last 3 years and 8 months, Kesha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'll just throw this out real quick and say again, Alderman Kesha Gibson called and Chuck Fagan got me doing this, and I ain't want to do this. But what you're actually looking at, this is a legacy. This is a skewed legacy of the PAC, of the NAACP PAC. I ain't want to throw that out there, but the PAC, your grandparents and parents might remember the PAC. The PAC told the Black community how to vote, and it was absolutely tied to Rousakis. It was a Democratic machine. The NAACP PAC is the reason why some of these people got elected to office, and they continue to do that for John Rousakis. And guess what? The legacy of the PAC is still with us with some of the elected officials that we have today. And this is the part of the skewed legacy, because that's when we talk about the accepting of the crumbs and that we get our small share. That's a part of that. What I'm saying, whereas as opposed to now realizing that you have real power now, and you don't have to try to negotiate with these people, that you can now use your power to not effectuate positive change for the Black community, African community, and the least and the left out, and poor income communities, Caucasians, Latinos, or Asians, that you could do something about it. But this is part of the skewed legacy that went off track of the NAACP PAC. The PAC still exists, but guess what? They're not in the shape that they were, but they have members of it who are no longer affiliated with the PAC like it is with the NAACP today. But that's what it is. And that's why, and you have an elected official right now who is a member of it, and they now perpetuate and put it down. And that's a part of what you talk about, Alderman, about the elite groups of people here. That's what they have become. That's what they are. And that this is a part, as I'm going to say, the crazed legacy of it. Yeah, not the one that's still about you taking power directly, politically, but now it's like the one say, okay, we're going to go this way right here and still get a little bit. And so, yeah, that's what it is, sadly.
If I can make a comment on this right here, and I want to specifically talk to this concept of melting pot. We got to stop using that term. And Dr. Harris, I love you, but a lot of people, I'm going to talk about it this way. America is never a melting pot. In a melting pot, all of the ingredients have equal value to the taste bud, right? We are more like maybe like a chef salad where you have the carrots and the tomato and the lettuce and all of that. See, in the salad, you can see that the shaved carrot might show up, but you don't taste it as much. Or the tomato might stand out because of its color and its size. Black folks, we're that less ingredient. We're probably the sesame seed in that salad. And that's what we got to understand in Savannah. We have got to start putting our communities at a priority. And what's happening is we will always be the lesser ingredient, but because we got people who don't understand our value. And so I just want to speak on that because we have been conditioned, number one, to accept that reality. But number two, we become conditioned to attack one another, to tear one another down. And at the end of the day, guess what? We still lose out and we're still the lesser ingredient.
But to that point, it's somewhat of a paradox because for full disclosure, one of the reasons why I did not align myself with any party affiliation was simply because it's insanity. And everybody is in bed, literally and figuratively, with each other. And I did not want any parts of it. You know, the Democratic Party, a Republican Party, they all are falling apart and falling to pieces. But they are also falling in together where the money resides. And so the only party that I am affiliated with is the People's Party, where our municipal government is concerned. That's one. The other piece, Dr. Teray, where the money resides, we now see when we ask the question and we talk about how much money is being poured into these elections, what we need to start saying is how much taxpayer dollars are being poured into the elections. See, now I sit at the table, guys. I sit at the tables. I see the contractual agreements. I see the cost modifications. I see the requests for cost overruns. Mm-hmm. And then I started to think one day recently, I said, you know what? I'm sitting here thinking that these people must be crazy to put their hard-earned money into these politicians who are not all the way there, who are not very bright, and who are essentially selfish. So why would they put their money in that much money? Max out campaign contributions to the tune of $3,000 a pop and more, because it doesn't count against a person if it's from a couple, a household. A husband and a wife can make a contribution, right?
Right.
At some level. I started to think about it. Look at the amount of money that went into marketing T-Splosh. Many members of the chamber and businesses of the chamber pump thousands of dollars into marketing T-Splosh to get that initiative on the ballot and get it passed, right? When you looked at the people who marketed T-Splosh, those were the same people who received contracts from the Board of Education, Chatham County government, and the city of Savannah. So then I started to say, that's where all of this money for these modifications and these cost overruns come from. So all they are doing is recycling taxpayer dollars. They win the contract. Once they win the contract and outbid a person, then they come back and say, oh, it didn't, it's going to cost me more because we had unforeseen circumstances, or we had this issue that we had to repair that we did not plan for. Yeah, right. And you see that time and time again from every single contractor. And I have asked and I have petitioned for controls over that and have been denied any access where that is concerned. Now, the other thing I want to say, we talk a lot about what is happening to and with Black people in the midst of all of this. Well, I submit to you, in this position and in my role, I have seen just as many white people, both middle class and lower economic levels, suffer just like Black people. So it's not much of the racism that we are seeing in Savannah. And there aren't many people who can say this other than me. Black elitism, and Black classism is worse than racism here in this town.
Yeah, it's bad. It's got really bad.
It's the God honest truth. So before we point the finger at anyone other than the people who have been leading this community for 40 years, Dr. Teray, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, for 40 years, we have been at the top level of leadership in this city and county. County Commission chair, African American with the majority. City councils, multiple African American males with majority council. Black DA, Black police chief, Black fire chief, Black judges, Black state senators, Black representatives, Black superintendent, majority Board of Education, African American leaders. We've been blackety black at all top levels for a long time. But how has that Black leadership moved the needle for the African American community when right now today we have the greatest atrocities to occur when it comes to the desecration of sacred land, like burial grounds, the Weeping Time, Mount Hermon, Yamacraw, Bethel AME Church. And Dr. Teray, you go on a rant and how, before we can talk about Weeping Time, we need to talk about these other pieces. But on this African American Council's watch, and better than that, super African American majority. And we have had more African American men and boys die on the watch of this super African American majority council than any white administration.
Well, now I'm just going to say, who were the people that killed Tyree Nichols? It was Black police officers. So now understand that you talk about elitism and all of that. That's still all tied to racism. That's why I threw it out there about self-hatred. That people know I talk about this for decades. I say, even with all the same thing, I share this with people. I say, guess what? When you don't like yourself, you don't look out for you. You don't look out for the people who look like you. When I talk about collectively, when I say you don't look out for you. So what it is, that elitism is an arm of racism. It is a manifestation. It is systemic. It is a system. It is the oppression. That's what occurs. When you dislike yourself, you see all these ills that we not manifest and put on ourselves. Like I tell folks, because I'm a victim of racism, I don't like Keisha Gibson Carter. I despise her. I despise Dr. Robert Bryant. But what's going on? Somebody else is in my head. I don't have my head together, and I might have a title. I might be the governor of Alabama. I am African American, and I still hate myself. And you all got an example from Savannah, Georgia, like that. Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas is an agent for racism. That again, he has all the accoutrements, and so that's why I tell people I never miss my words about this. Yes, I'm like saying no, because the stuff that I have to endure is still worse than what some Caucasians. I understand the pain and the anguish for them because I speak up for them too. But I'm like saying, but that's the sickness that I'm going to just throw it out there. I've seen some Black politicians here that when they're around y'all, they disrespect y'all without any problem. But when they're around Caucasians, they do not. Why is that? Because they don't respect your humanity. They respect the humanity of other people. So they're always right. So again, and that's why when you put them in positions, because they're part of that elite element too now. But that means that they'll disrespect you and other people like you, people of color also. Because again, but the other people are always right. And so that's what we got to become healthy. And that's what this election is about, us becoming healthy and having a true democracy. That's why, I put it out there, and I said this back in 2018, 2019. When you have Black elected officials who are in tune to themselves and to their souls, everybody benefits and everybody rise. That is, if you are Latino, Asian, Caucasian, you are male or female, we rise when they have in tune to themselves. Because see, they understand their humanity and understand the humanity of other people. What we got going on here, we got folks here who don't respect my humanity, nor they respect your humanity, because they don't love themselves. That's why I talk about that self-hatred. That is real. I'm not going to get into it. Well, I just thought post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's all what it is. That's what occurs. We minimize ourselves. And so I'm just throwing it out there. They manifest. They are the buffer Negroes. They are the ones that help in the oppression. And they continue to do it right now. They're gatekeepers and all that. And it is so sad that they are the same agents of all of us. And they manifest in this when really we should have been the generation of change for our people. And that's what's going on right now. These systems are trying to make sure that we don't see the change with Keisha Gibson Carter becoming mayor, Robert Bryant being elected to office, Todd Rose, Tammy Stone, Tia Brightwell, Taylor Washington, that Lucia Johannes. They don't want to see that happen because they know y'all are going to bring parity to everybody, not just one group. And y'all not going to keep the system in place. Y'all going to say, how can we spend these dollars equitably for everybody in the city? And it is shameful that, again, the people who are right in charge right now and been in charge for a while have been people like us. But guess what? They don't have their minds. Oh, that's what I'm going to say. I'm just throwing it out there. This is an African proverb. They say, the trees remember, the axe forgets. Mm. And also, the other part too is that they say, when the axe goes into the forest, the trees say, look, it's one of us. Oh, guess what? That axe got a new head on it, and that axe is destructive. And that's what's going on with our politicians here in the city of Savannah, and that legacy you're talking about, Alderwoman. That's what it is. We got axes, and they ain't us no more because they got a new head. They've been fashioning shape.
But and if I could expand on that, and let me expand on this, Keisha, real quick. I want to go back to the money piece and tie this together with what Dr. Toure just said about access. You see, I'm about to put it on out there. There's a very influential group in the city. They're called developers, and they have a group called the Home Builders Association of Savannah, and they like to wine and dine you, and they'll send you 6 or 7 emails. Come to our reception. Well, I'm glad to say that a number of us have told them no, thank you. And let me tell you about your contributions where you can put them. You can take your contributions and you can give them to these Black communities, in particular our young Black youth. You can make sure that my seniors have a place to be and that they have the resources they need to thrive. You can make sure that affordable housing that y'all so concerned about are built. And better yet, because this incumbent can't get it done, you can help us with flooding. So that's where you put your funding. We don't want your money and we don't want your sandwich. We want our communities to be stronger.
Yeah. And I want to say, and I don't know if you can find a producer. I'm glad you mentioned where they can put their money. We had a young man here in Savannah, unfortunately, die during a football game. He was a student at Windsor Forest. And his family has established a GoFundMe to help with final expenses. And so we want to challenge all of our elected leaders, as well as those of us who are running for office, to make a contribution to that GoFundMe to help this young man and to help this young man's family. Dr. Toure, I don't know if you have information related to the GoFundMe, or producer, if you can find it. I would like to have that put in the chat. And we will ask that we dedicate any contributions that would be or could be made to my campaign tonight, that we donate it to aid this family. And I will also be making a contribution from the campaign to elect Keisha Gibson Carter mayor. And we only put that out there so that we are making a challenge to others to follow suit. Now is the time to spend that money. I have a question here, one of the few that I could read because he put it in bold letters. But Mr. Nazari, as we have acknowledged, We are in receipt of your proposal, and I stated to you that anything that resembles this request by way of an ordinance or presentation would be dead on arrival. One, because I'm presenting it, and two, because this council does not have the spirit to adopt such. So we can only hope to put into action the recognition of indigenous people and organizations standing squarely on the rights to their human rights, the Declaration of Nationality and Self-Determination. If he's asking me if you support these organizations with a public statement on this level and the memorandum of commitment to support human rights for the freedom, for the freed man, I'm sorry guys, I don't have my readers on, for the freed man of Gullah, Moors, MSTA, Yoruba, African, Ethiopia, EWF Incorporated. Then you can bring a balance to culture. You give the youth the sight to see, to respect the conscious change, but failure to accept these organizations give the youth the mindset it didn't make sense to change from savage ways. Takes vision to bring change. See, I could read the bold print. And so I wholeheartedly, I want you to know, concur and ascribe to these notions, recognizing that the ideal and most noble way for us to stop the bleed and to promote harmony among our youth and to bring a sense of self-awareness, a sense of hope, which comes along with opportunity. This is, in fact, the direction we have to go in, because no one would argue or question that the primary reason we see so much Black on Black violence is that we have a generation who has lost the sense of self. They have lost hope amidst opportunities where we as elected leaders have failed to promote policies, initiatives, and programs that help to undergird and aid in the spirit of pride, in the spirit of freedom, in the spirit of opportunity and hope. And so, yes, I say today we support all initiatives as such. Moving on, and in closing, Dr. Bryant, we want to give you to have final words, but we do want to announce that there is another forum hosted by the Downtown Neighborhood Association along with the Victorian Neighborhood Association. I think there may be one or two more who will be joining them, hosting a forum among the mayors, and I believe it's Post 1 and Post 2 and District 2. And that will be at the Delaware Center at 6. What time is it, Dr. Bryant? 6:00 p.m. Let's be on the safe.
And if I may, I don't mean to say this. I find it, and I'm not making a shout out, so because I know how people are in this city, especially some of the faith leaders. I find it interesting that the certain alliances didn't have a 5th district forum, but we do need to have another forum or debate with the 5th district candidates. But I'm gonna leave that where that's at. And I'm hoping that the 5th district coalition or one of our neighborhoods has another forum or debate, because you need to see who's prepared and who's not, and who's practicing and who's for real.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you want to ask for a vote? Early voting has started.
Yeah. Well, and I'll share that really quick. And so, give me just 2.5 minutes. But I appreciate this. What I'm going to present 68 and Dr. Toure respectfully is a report card. What I have here are what you call outcomes. Dr. Toure understands outcomes. Kesha, you understand outcomes. In 4 years, you can have measures. You can measure me on did we do these things or not. But in addition to outcomes, I've already created goals that we can achieve in the first 2 quarters, which is the first 180 days. And those goals are, we're going to restore gender access. We're going to have a conversation around poverty. We're going to look at the fairgrounds, and I want to walk every street and every corner of every neighborhood in our district. That's not practicing. And so what we're going to do is we have something that we can measure, and we have some things that we can say we either going to get done or we're not going to get done. And that's what we want in the 5th district, and that's what the people deserve.
And I am excited to work alongside you. I do intend to be very active and action-oriented council. We want to do less talking and more listening, but we also want to have more action, right? We want our citizens in a short amount of time to be able to point, touch, and feel the difference we are making, because what we are experiencing right now in our city, and this is why we are now able to kind of sit back and say, finally, you guys get it. You know why? Because the rhetoric that has ensued from the Gold Dome has not kept pace with the reality of what is actually happening in our city, in our community. The rhetoric from the Gold Dome has not kept pace with what is actually happening. We talk a lot about affordable housing under the Gold Dome, but we have experienced more and more forced displacement. We talk about alleviating homelessness, but we have never seen as much homelessness, vagrancy on the streets of Savannah. We talk a lot about saving our taxpayers' money, but this administration has failed to roll back the millage rate for 3 years, 3 of the 4 years we've been in office, which resulted in property tax increases. So we're talking. And so we're going to commit to do less talking to, but more listening to, and more doing and being more action oriented. And with that, I want to close tonight. Thank my guests, Dr. Ito Freeman. Thank you, Dr. Teray, you, Dr. Bryant, and thanks to Chuck Fagan as well. And guys, we appreciate you for helping us make a difference that we want to see in Savannah. You all have a good night. Savannah, we love you.
Okay, we're going to get you out of here. Hold on one second.
HVJ, baby, HVJ.
Oh, y'all can't beat Wednesday in football. Bye.
Like this.